All right, hello and welcome. If you're getting ready for your GCSE biology exams, you are in the perfect spot. Today, we're jumping into one of the most important topics in all of biology, reproduction and inheritance. So, let's get right into it.
So, let's start with a big one. Have you ever looked in the mirror and thought, wait a minute, I've got my dad's nose but my mom's eyes? Why aren't you just a perfect carbon copy of one of them? That's the huge question we're going to unpack right now.
To get to the bottom of that, we first need to get our heads around the two main strategies that nature uses to create new life. Yep, there are two very different ways of passing genetic info from one generation to the next. On one side, you've got asexual reproduction. This just involves one parent, and it produces offspring that are genetically identical. Yep, they're clones. Think about bacteria just splitting in two. Then on the other side, there's sexual reproduction. This needs two parents, and it involves these special sex cells called gametes coming together. And the result? Genetic variation. This is the one that made you, well, you. Now, when we keep saying passing on information, what are we really talking about? We're talking about DNA. Honestly, the best way to picture it is like a master recipe book for building a living thing.
Let's break that down. Your genome, that's the entire recipe book, the whole shebang. Every single instruction needed to build and run you is in there. It's the complete set of instructions.
So, if the genome is the whole book, a chromosome is like one chapter in that book. And we humans have 46 of these chapters, all neatly organized into 23 pairs in most of our cells. They're just DNA that's been coiled up super tightly.
Okay, let's zoom in even closer. A gene is like a single recipe within one of those chapters. It's a specific little piece of DNA that has the code for one particular thing, like making the protein that decides your hair color.
And here's where it gets really cool. For just about every recipe or gene, there can be different versions. We call these alleles. So for the eye color gene, you might have an allele for brown eyes and another one for blue eyes. It's the same gene, just with different results.
So, the big question is, how does the blueprint from two different people actually get mixed together? It all comes down to a really special type of cell division called meiosis. This is the process that creates sperm and egg cells, the gametes.
Think of meiosis as a kind of two-step dance. First, the cell copies all of its DNA, just like it normally would. But then, and this is the clever bit, it doesn't divide once, it divides twice, and the end result is 4 gametes. But here's the most important part. They're all genetically unique, and they have only half the number of chromosomes. Just a single set, not pairs.
Okay, listen up, because this is a classic exam topic, so you really want to lock this in. Mitosis is for growth and repair. It just makes 2 identical body cells. Meiosis is all about sexual reproduction. It makes 4 unique sex cells, or gametes, with half the genetic info. That is the fundamental difference, and you've got to know it.
Okay, so we've got these unique little gametes, but how does the information they're carrying actually decide what we end up looking like? This is where we get into the rules of inheritance, stuff first worked out by the genius Gregor Mendel.
First up, we've got your genotype. This is what's actually written in your genetic code. It's the combination of alleles you got from your parents for a certain gene. So for eye color, your genotype could be big B, or maybe big B, little b.
And the phenotype? Well, that's what you actually see in the mirror. It's the physical trait that shows up because of your genotype. So if your genotype for eye color says brown eyes, then your phenotype is, you guessed it, brown eyes. It's the trait you can actually observe. So how does the genotype become the phenotype? It really depends on whether the alleles are dominant or recessive. A dominant allele is kind of like the loud one in the room. If it's there at all, it's the one that gets expressed. A recessive allele is a bit shyer. You only see its effect if you've got 2 copies of it, with no dominant one to boss it around.
And this brilliant little tool, a Punnett square, helps us predict the outcomes. See, we put the alleles from one parent across the top, big B and little b, and the other parent's alleles down the side. Then you just fill in the grid. You can see the possible genotypes for their kids, 1 big B, 2 big Bs, and 1 little b. Now, since big B is dominant, 3 of those combinations will result in the dominant phenotype. That gives us a 3 in 4 chance of that, and just a 1 in 4 chance of the recessive one showing up.
Right, so that's the theory. But how does this actually apply to real-life conditions you need to know for your exam? Let's have a look at 2 really specific examples.
Our first case study is polydactyly. It sounds complicated, but it's a condition where a person is born with extra fingers or toes. Now, the absolute key genetic point to remember here is that polydactyly is caused by a dominant allele. That means you only need to inherit one copy of that faulty allele from just one parent to have the condition. So if a parent has it, there's a 50% chance they'll pass it on to each of their children.
Our second case study is very different. This time, we're looking at cystic fibrosis. This is a disorder that affects cell membranes, and it causes this thick, sticky mucus to build up, especially in the lungs and the digestive system. And here's the crucial contrast with polydactyly. Cystic fibrosis is caused by a recessive allele. So to have the disorder, you have to inherit two copies, one from your mom and one from your dad. People who have just one copy are called carriers. They don't have the disorder, but they can still pass that allele on to their children.
You know, these exact same principles of inheritance also determine something incredibly fundamental about us, our biological sex. It all comes down to that 23rd pair of chromosomes.
Females have two X chromosomes, which means their eggs always carry a single X. Males, on the other hand, have one X and one Y, so their sperm can carry either an X times or a Y. And as you can see from the Punnett square, this works out to a simple 50-50 probability of the baby being female, XX, or male, XY.
So we've covered how all this genetic information gets shuffled up and passed on, creating so much variation. But that just leads to an even bigger question, doesn't it? What happens when the DNA code itself is changed by a mutation? And how does that process, mixed with natural selection, end up driving the evolution of all life on this planet? Well, that's where this amazing story leads to next.